On the other hand, there are two differences, I think, at the moment. Jean-Raymond, I like it that you speak about un rêveur or a dreamer. I first of all understood a raver, but it's a dreamer, I think, and it's really important that we have visions. And for the future work, and especially for the experts themselves. And so far we haven't got these structures installed that we are more or less recognized on a European basis. But coming back from the dreams, coming back to the work, I will just give you some overview of the next steps that we have in mind for the rest of the project. So with the results of the consensus conference, which will be produced by the jury, we will then finally finalize the documents. And I think these documents, I just compared it to FindexII. You said we have from each country, we know a little bit how it works. It gives a lot of information how it works, but we have another step more now. We now speaking about concrete criteria which could be used in each country. And I think it would be a good thing if we produce this as a guidance for at least the pilot countries, which they can use and they can review if they fulfill all these criteria or if they want to go ahead. And this is, I think, another step with the criteria. And it's also with the requirements for experts to be and to stay registered. Because in FindexII, we heard that there is a list or a register or not. And now we can understand perhaps how some people go or could apply to be on the list and stay on the list. At least we give some input how this can be solved in the national countries. And of course, that is the reason why we do this. This is a mutual understanding of the sector of expertise and experts, and also mutual trust in the systems of the different countries, so that it's easier to appoint experts, even if it doesn't occur so many times. But I know from at least the little countries in the EU, or those who share common languages with other countries, they are used to appoint experts from other countries. And I think I also learned today that it would be, I think it was your proposal, it would be good if we have some kind of transparency in each register, what they really do, which kind of the criteria they would use. And I think this is a good starter with all the documents that we produced. And of course, not last but not least, the bodies who are in charge of expert directories. This is the first conference I've ever been on that we did not discuss about the type of body. If it has to be the court, or if it has to be a chamber, or if it has to be the Minister of Justice. This was the first time. We have developed, I think. So the most important, I think, is that they all fulfill the criteria that we propose. And whatever is the case in the country and the situation in the country, I think we will be able to offer a good range of criteria and requirements for each body who is registering experts. And it will also be some guidance for the different countries, perhaps to change. We have heard that some countries register for 5 years or 6 years or 1 year, and perhaps we will change this something in the future. And for those who do not limit a registration, perhaps find a way to go ahead to another system. I think this is really the things for the future. And the next steps, this is more or less the working package 3 nomenclature. I think Jan already told us that they will do now a review of the proposal in the member states, starting with the pilot countries. And if it's necessary, they would adjust. We heard today from the discussions that I was not surprised to hear, especially from the experts, that they were discussing details before we have the whole thing installed before. I also learned, because when you ask an expert, you can ask a question, they ask 3 or 4 questions, at least. Today I learned even lawyers and judges ask more questions. So we are on the same track nowadays. And of course, this what is already produced, and I used it in some of the areas because my colleague in the office in my institute has been working for 20 years on nomenclatures and on finding expert in digital databases. And she is checking all the time if this works with, for example, some part of the German system and so on. And I can give you the feedback, Jan, that most of the things work. So therefore, I think it's also a good step ahead. We haven't spoken about the future of this nomenclature, and I think it's also a dream of Jean Raymond. We have to have some kind of structure, some kind of sustainable structure which is also financed to go ahead with this work. Because once you start with this nomenclature work, I can tell you, you will never stop it again. And I've learned from our Austrian colleagues that because their nomenclature is regulated by law, and it takes about 3 to 4 years to update it. And we have other systems like in Germany, for example, where it's not regulated by law. And there's a group who discusses this every year, twice, 3 times, and so on. And so I think we will also need for the European or the FindexII nomenclature, we would need a structure to develop this for the future. And I think we learned today from each other, and that is my personal view, is that we have to include all the stakeholders in this. This means the expert and their associations, the judges, the lawyers, and so on, so that we can really work on this and to build trust to each other's work. And we have to find such a structure. And I think this will be also a discussion for the future, how we can do this. There were discussions telling, is this something the Commission could do? Normally, if it costs money, they say no. But we have to find a solution. And perhaps it's an organization for experts, or it is an organization like a think tank which is dealing with expertise, or others, or all together. And I think this is, but we have to think about it. Because once we started this work, this will never end again, I can tell you. Yeah, and then last but not least, it's not the next step. I also use the word future steps. It's the European search engine. And we have seen how much work there's still to do. And this is not because we are lazy, but also, as Jean-Raymond said, we have not a regulated profession. We are only in the area of practitioners, which have different approaches to their registration. And so we are speaking when we speak about the lawyers, we're speaking about 20 specialities. And as I told from the experts, we are about some 100. And if we take some country as an average country, not because as average, but of the number of areas of expertise, it's France with 200 in their nomenclature. But this is more or less in the middle of all the things that we find in Europe. But this makes, even if IT and artificial intelligence we are speaking about, those people who have worked with databases know if you do not have the right information, even AI is not able to find the right result. And last but not least, I think from the practice that I know, asking or appointing experts for some kind of work. It's still, we call it a people's business. So that you have to communicate with the expert. You have to communicate before you appoint it sometimes. And that is not the search engine which will do the work. Perhaps it will, that we have a chatbot. I'm looking forward to the chatbot which will be installed by Dr. Scheif this after he reported about his AI project. And it would be nice if we had a chatbot for experts giving the right questions. And we do not have to laugh. Perhaps this works and perhaps this happens. But at the moment, for making a decision that we learned, it's a person in the end. And for the recommendations or the results of a report, it's in the end the expert who is responsible for it. Personal, and therefore it will be his job again. So, one of the biggest tasks, I think, and this is for the future task, is bringing this pilot work to a common approach. Because when we find these 6 countries accepting to send their data to some common place in Europe, I would be happy if the others would be motivated to do so too. Because coming back to the lawyers again, they started with 6 countries, just like we did. Now, after 12 years, this is online, I think, they are at 25 countries. And so it means there's a lot of way to go and to convince different countries to deliver their information. But I'm really convinced that we are on the right track because we have other professions who had reached this goal, and I think for the expertise and for the experts it will be necessary that we reach the same, but I'm really convinced that with this project here, FindexII, and hopefully the FindexIII, we will come closer to this goal. And thank you very much for being here today. Thank you very much to the jury to take the time.